Sarah, a first-year student, had just moved into the university dormitory. On her first night while arranging her belongings, she heard a strange sound from the hallway. At first, she thought it was the footsteps of other students. But when it was midnight and the sound continued, she became worried. Fearfully, she went to the door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty, but the sound was getting closer. Her heart was pounding. Suddenly, the sound stopped right behind the door. Sarah held her breath. There was a soft rustling sound, as if someone or something was touching the door. With trembling hands, she picked up her phone to call the guard. At that moment, she heard the terrifying sound of scratching on the door. Sarah screamed and took refuge in the corner of the room. The sound grew louder and louder until the door opened with a loud bang. Sarah closed her eyes in terror, but a familiar voice snapped her out of her shock. "Sarah, are you okay?" She opened her eyes and saw her roommate staring at her with concern. I forgot to take my key and was trying to open the door. I thought you were asleep." Sarah breathed a sigh of relief. But for a long time after, any sound at night would terrify her. Was everything really just a misunderstanding, or was something prowling the dormitory hallway that night? Ali, a history graduate student, had gone to the old university library for his thesis research. There were rumors about wandering spirits in this library, but he didn't believe in such things. It was past midnight, and he was the only one left there. He was studying an old book when he suddenly heard something fall from the end of the corridor. He looked up in surprise. "Is anyone there?" There was no answer. He cautiously went towards the sound. A book had fallen on the floor. He picked it up and noticed it was a book about death and spirits. His heart was beating faster. He turned to go back to his desk, but noticed the library lights were turning off one by one. Terrified, he ran towards the exit, but the door was locked. He could hear whispering from behind the shelves. "Who's there?" "This isn't a funny joke." Suddenly, all the lights went out. In complete darkness, he heard footsteps approaching him. He was breathless. A cold hand touched his shoulder and a voice whispered, "What are you looking for?" Ali screamed and opened his eyes. He had fallen asleep on the library desk. The guard was standing over him with concern. "Son, are you all right? You were having a nightmare." Ali breathed a sigh of relief, but when he looked at the book under his hand, the blood froze in his veins. It was the same book he had seen in his dream, a book about death and spirits. Was it really all just a dream? Mariam, an art student, decided to photograph the old abandoned university building for her photography project. This building had been unused for years, and there were many rumors about it. With permission from the university management, she entered the building on an autumn afternoon. The interior was cold and damp. Mariam was taking pictures of various rooms with her camera. In one of the rooms, a large old mirror caught her attention. She decided to take a picture of herself in the mirror. When she raised the camera, for a moment, she felt her reflection in the mirror move. She was shocked, but thought she was imagining things. She took the picture and looked at the camera's display screen. Her heart sank. In the photo, there was a dark shadow behind her that wasn't there in reality. Frightened, she looked behind her. No one was there. She stared at the mirror again, and this time, her reflection gave a scary smile, while she herself was terrified. She screamed and ran towards the door. In the hallway, she could hear footsteps behind her. Breathless, she ran down the stairs. When she reached the exit door, she found it locked. She turned back in horror and saw a shadow approaching her. Just as the shadow reached her, the door opened and sunlight poured in. Mariam ran outside and fell into the arms of her friend, who was waiting for her worriedly. "Mariam, what happened? Why are you so pale?" Mariam could never explain what she had seen in that building. Her photos had also mysteriously disappeared. But from that day on, every time she passed by that building, she felt someone or something watching her from the windows. Amir, a music student, had gone to the empty faculty studio for night practice. It was midnight and he was playing the piano. Suddenly, he heard a soft and mysterious voice whispering along with the piano melody. At first, he thought he was hallucinating, but when he stopped playing, the voice continued. Frightened, he looked around. The studio was empty. He followed the sound and reached a dark hallway. The voice became clearer, a sad song that seemed to be coming out of the walls. Amir wanted to run away, but his curiosity pushed him forward. He reached the end of the hallway and faced an old door he had never seen before. The sound was coming from behind the door. With trembling hands, he turned the handle. The door opened and he entered a room full of old musical instruments. In the corner of the room, an old gramophone was playing music. Amir approached it in surprise. On the gramophone record, he saw a picture of a young woman dated 50 years ago. Under the photo was written, "In memory of the lost melody." Suddenly, the music stopped and the room fell silent. Amir felt a cold hand touch his shoulder. He turned in horror and he opened his eyes. He had fallen asleep on the piano. The faculty guard had woken him up. "Son, it's 2 a.m. You need to go home." Amir breathed a sigh of relief, but as he was gathering his things, something on the piano caught his attention. An old photo of the same woman he had seen in his dream, with the same inscription, "In memory of the lost melody." From that night on, every time Amir was alone in the studio, he felt someone silently listening to his playing. Was the spirit of that woman still searching for her lost melody?